Okay, so this is the chart that I use usually when I'm talking about world systems theory. This is the system that Wallerstein is talking about. This is the thing that you are basically, whether you choose it or not, you're a part of this system. So it's broken down between countries that are in the core. Whoops, hold on. Countries in the core, countries in the periphery, and countries in the semi-periphery. Now, there's no great way to sort of talk about this, but the core is like the U.S., Europe, Western Europe, sort of, the first world is what we usually sort of say about this. This is the democratic capitalist world. This is the colonizers of the world. If you go back to the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and even now. And then the periphery is sort of the third world. Hold off on semi-periphery for now. So this is like the third world, global south, etc. So the idea being that essentially, through whatever means, whether it's economic or military or whatever, the stuff, or the ideas, I guess is a better way to say, the ideas, the innovation happens in the core. This is where we get the leading materials, or I'm sorry, leading manufacturers. The raw materials come from the periphery. So we think about, for example, oil coming from third world countries, or we think about gold or coltan or copper coming from these other countries that are used then to make this stuff. So then we look at the periphery, and it's not a coincidence, according to this sort of system theory, that essentially not only does the core have democratic governments, the periphery has non-democratic governments, because the core needs access to those raw materials. So it's not that they really care that much about democracy in those peripheral nations. What they care about is the flow of materials up. Since the stuff that you make is valued more than the raw materials themselves, what ends up happening is the stuff is made up here, from materials here. So the materials they're cheap from here, they move this way, they're made expensive up there, and then they're sold back that direction, which means that all along the value, and this sort of arrow right here represents wealth, I guess you could say, that then is shifted from the periphery to the core. The thickness of the arrow just shows how much is sort of moving that direction. So again, when you look at this system, it's not a big surprise from Wallerstein's point of view that the periphery is not only, or the third world, I guess you'd say, is not only underdeveloped. The system itself doesn't really allow for its development. Maybe one or two countries from the periphery moves up, but for the most part, no. This is how it is structured, and the system itself continues that structure, reinforces that structure. Now, the other thing that I'll add to this is semi-periphery. The semi-periphery is, we talked about leading manufacturers in the core. What's going to happen is, over time, it becomes less and less beneficial to make that thing in the center or in the core. There's new things that keep popping up, new leading manufacturer things that pop up, and that's what the core focuses on, as the semi-periphery then becomes the manufacturer of sort of the next generation of that leading stuff. So, for example, the first computers are built in America and Western Europe. And then after about 10, 15 years, manufacturing of computers moves to China and Southeast Asia and other countries like that, the semi-periphery. They are still the semi-periphery is still going to import the leading manufacturers, but they also make what we call the mature manufacturers, the stuff that's already sort of been made and just is now being produced. And so that's the role that essentially, a country like maybe China would fit into this category, where a lot of the stuff is being made, but it's like the next generation of stuff, not their sort of leading stuff. Bottom line, they still need the raw materials as well. And so we have the same situation where we have the flow of wealth that's moving from periphery to semi-periphery, and from semi-periphery into the core. And again, the whole system, because this is how the system is, and whether you think it's intentional or unintentional, we'll talk about that here in the next slide, The point is that the wealth is always flowing into the core. And so the idea that this structure would change doesn't make sense. The system itself reinforces the system. And that's really Wallerstein's point is once you're in the system, let's say if I come into the system as a peripheral country, I'm a third world country, my odds of ever not being a third world country in the future is very, very low. Like you can say all the nice things you want to about poor countries becoming wealthy, but the system, again, looking at this chart, that it just doesn't play out that way. It's not going to happen. And so the system itself is, from Wallerstein's position, unjust. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. That is this. And I put this up.